ready when you are.
Okay.
Gabe.
I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Tuesday, February 28th, 2017 regular board meeting. Welcome to this meeting, public meeting of the Princeton Board of Education. The board is an elected, unpaid group of 10 citizens who set policy and make decisions on educational, financial, and personnel matters for the Princeton Public Schools on behalf of all residents. We're always pleased when members of the community attend our meetings. The board and the school district operate under applicable New Jersey law and under regulations of the New Jersey State Board of Education. Each meeting includes 3 opportunities for those attending to comment on items on the published agenda or other matters that are of interest to them. Early in the meeting, there's a 15-minute open topic public forum. Further in the agenda, there's a second public forum to provide an opportunity for members of the public to speak on agenda items only. And then additionally, the public will have a final opportunity to make comments after the board's discussion of new business. The board reserves the right to limit the time allotted to public participation. Law limits discussion of individual personnel and confidential matters. We desire that our meetings provide useful opportunities for our communication between the board and the community, and thank you for attending. So with that, Ms. Kennedy, if you could call the roll.
Patrick Sullivan.
Here.
Daphne Kendall.
Here.
Betsy Baglio.
Here.
Debbie Braunfeld.
Here.
Justin Doran.
Here.
Bill Hare.
Here.
Fern Sproul.
Here.
Greg Stankiewicz.
Here.
Connie Witter.
Here.
Evelyn Spahn.
Here.
Next category. Brian Lee
Here.
and Abby Emerson.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we will move on to item E1, adoption of the minutes for January 24th, 2017. And this is, may I have a motion to adopt the minutes? Justin, second Connie. And now, it's just a show of hands. All in favor of the adoption of the minutes?
I have to abstain.
Okay, so it's unanimous, but for Fern, who is abstaining. Okay, if I'm going too fast, just slow me down. Tell me when you're.
I'm good now.
Okay. And item E2, adoption of the minutes of the special board meeting in closed session on February 21st, 2017. I have a motion and a second. Connie and Debbie. All in favor?
I'll get faster.
Okay. All in favor, everyone except Fern, who's abstaining. All abstentions? Fern, abstaining?
Yes.
Okay. And this brings us to item F, which is our first public forum. This is, as we said, a limit of 15 minutes, open to the public on any item that you'd like to speak of. You're welcome to come to the microphone now. And if we can ask you just 2 things, to state your name and where you live, number 1, and number 2, if there's anyone else out who'd like to make comments, we just want to make sure, one other gentleman, maybe 2, 3. So we have 4, I think 4 of you, so if we can just make sure that the 15-minute, allotment here works for all of you, that's roughly, 3-4 minutes per person, if that's okay.
I'll just keep it quick. Dena Shaw, I live on Clover Lane. Is that good? Okay. So I've been here before discussing enrollment, and it came to my attention just because I happen to be at John Witherspoon because of my role there, that we have now 14 new 6th graders since January. So then I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about residency, and I went in to ask, how do we verify where these people are living? And I found out that 2 years ago, we put in place new residency requirements. There's like a chart of the things you have to provide. And then it dawned on me that no one has ever verified my residence since 2007. And I moved last summer, and all I did was go in to the system and put in a new address. And of course, there's chatter about different ways that people may be claiming residency. I learned recently of a child who is still in the system from the previous time of being able to pay. So I'm here to make a request or a suggestion because I'm do believe that if you have a gripe, maybe you should come up with a solution. And I don't know if this is possible, but what if we were to require people, in order to register for 2017, to resubmit their residencies? Because we don't know who's living here or where people are. Lots of rentals. I know we have the great Avalon Bay and other places in Bunn Drive. So what if we said to people, we're giving you notice now, but in order to come to Princeton schools in 2017, you have to resubmit your deed, your lease, or something, because we have rising enrollment and the high school is very crowded. And I hear little rumors of things like people, this is crazy, but selling addresses. I'm told, go onto Craigslist and look, and you will see you can buy an address in Princeton. I know it's insane, but I don't have time for those things, but these things do happen. So then I thought, what if we do something in the paper and a blast out from Steve Cochran, right? And we could do it in multiple languages so that nobody feels they didn't understand the rules of the road. I know when I did Super Saturday, I did it in English, Spanish, and Chinese because I wanted to include everybody. I know people that can do that translation work. And another idea I had was on Power School, put a line in that says, where does your tax return go? Because that could verify some things. And then lastly, I had an idea. When you register, what if we made an algorithm that the first question was, what's your address? And if that address is taken, 185 Clover Lane is taken by the Shaws, well, then you can't register your children because you don't live there. If you're, paying for the address, cohabitating in some way, maybe it's a rental property, which I did just hear that story. People have rental properties, live elsewhere, but have their mail sent there so their children can go to our schools. And I don't mean to be mean and harsh, but I'm paying taxes, and so are most of you that live here. And Princeton has become incredibly desirable. Montgomery children, West Windsor children, East Windsor children. That's an unfortunate situation. So, and again, the high school and JW are crowded. And so these are my suggestions. Make a field that it has to connect first. I asked if that was going on at John Witherspoon, and she said no. She just puts it in. She does not verify that that address is taken. And I do understand that there are extenuating circumstances about homeless families or families with special situations. But I think that if we put that out to the public, I think we could have a few families that might weed out the violators just by hearing that we were going to be asking for that by August 1st. So there's my suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like, thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Liz Winslow. I live on Dodds Lane. My question is this. The board held a closed meeting last week that had not been on the previously announced agenda, which is, of course, fine. Sufficient notice was put out. However, the agenda item was listed only as pending litigation, and Walter Luer, who is an attorney, was reported by Planet Princeton today saying pending litigation was an insufficient agenda item, that it could mean anything. So I was wondering if we could get some clarification on the topic of the pending litigation.
Hi, Liz. So actually, we consulted with our own attorney about appropriate advertisement of closed session meetings, and pending litigation is considered acceptable as an advertisement. When we went into closed session, we went from public session into closed session, we passed a resolution that had more specificity in it, and that resolution identified the focus of the conversation as litigation around the charter school.
Okay, thank you.
Litigation. Yep, you're welcome.
Anyone else? Dr. Carell.
Hi, Bob Carell, Princeton High School. Mine's just a point of information. I'm trying to navigate this newfangled agenda system, and as best I can tell, there is no listing for any personnel items that are athletic EPES. Is that correct for this month?
No, there's
I looked at the addendum.
No, there's two. That's not
There's two addendums.
No, one addendum.
No, there's two positions.
Okay. I'll just look more closely. That's why I couldn't find it. You've made my job much harder.
Dave might be able to help you because he's helped the rest of us.
I asked for help. He was busy. All right, I'll look again. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Sure. Isn't this technology great? The old system was much, much worse than this, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, anyone else for, anyone else for our first public comment session tonight? Okay. If there's no one else, then we'll move on to the board president's report, which is fairly brief. Just wanted to make a few comments. We all have been focused on the unfair and onerous charter school expansion over the last few months. But we've also tried to focus on the things that we all ran and got elected to do, which is work on improving the educational experiences of the children of our community. And so we wanted to sort of deliberately focus on those sorts of issues tonight. And one thing that I'm particularly happy about, two things. One is we have some really interesting things coming out of all of our committees' reports tonight, and so we'll leave that for later, but there's lots of great things happening, number one. And number two, just wanted to highlight that Sara Lita and Meredith Cook, who several months ago, maybe even half a year ago, came to Student Achievement Committee to talk about differentiated learning and the sort of challenges and really opportunities around differentiation in teaching, are here tonight to bring that message to the whole community. So we're excited to hear about all these things, and we're going to focus on all of that, making sure that our children are educated in the best way possible. So very excited to talk about those things tonight. And with that, I would turn it over to our superintendent for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Good evening and welcome to all of you here tonight and to many people watching at home. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who may be wondering, we have not yet heard from Commissioner Harrington regarding her decision about the charter school expansion application. We continue to appreciate the deliberateness with which she is making her decision. And with that said, I'm happy tonight to return to topics of teaching and learning in the Princeton Public Schools. As Mr. Sullivan noted, we begin tonight with a presentation on what is known as executive function. Teaching and I would dare to say parenting are both an art and a science. The art is necessarily informed by our understanding of the science, and tonight we're lucky to have with us two educators who are really expert in the science of how our children's brains work. They'll be speaking to us about that portion of, I think, the prefrontal cortex, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Lita, that enables our students to plan, to prioritize, to focus attention, to regulate emotions, to remember instructions, and to juggle multiple tasks. That's the portion of the brain known as executive function. Believe it or not, children are not born with their executive function skills fully formed. Those skills and mental processes develop over time, and there are actually specific strategies that we as teachers, as educators, as parents can do to help develop those skills. So Mickey Crisafulli, our Director of Student Services, has been instrumental in ensuring that our staff in this district understand the importance of executive function in our work with children. And I invite Mickey to introduce the members of her team who are here tonight to share more with us on that topic. Mickey.
Sure. I'd like to bring Sara and Meredith up. Sara Lita is a school social worker. She's at Riverside and Littlebrook School, and Meredith is a school psychologist at Littlebrook School. Both of these individuals are very passionate about their work. They have gone to numerous professional developments. One in particular, they came back. I've never seen staff members so excited about a professional development as when they went to something about a year and a half ago on executive function. They took that learning and they turned it around to share with their colleagues, their child study team colleagues, but they also last year, about maybe last March, trained many of our staff members around the district in executive function. So Steve gave a great introduction. I'm going to let them come up and tell you more about it. But we also have a special education PTO meeting next Wednesday, so I invite parents to come out. Sarah and Meredith will be giving their full presentation. You get a little snapshot tonight. So come on up, ladies.
Good evening. My name is Sara Lita, social worker at Littlebrook, Riverside, and preschool child study team.
And I'm Meredith Cook, the school psychologist at Littlebrook and also on the preschool child study team.
I have to say that Mickey and Steve stole a little bit of our thunder. This is really just to kind of wet your whistle with regards to what will be on display next Wednesday, March 8th. Which I can't believe it's March already. And just to tell you a little bit about how we came to this presentation and why we felt it was so important. I would say when I first started in this field, which is getting more and more years ago, ADHD was the big word, and then it was ADD, ADHD, and then it kind of evolved into executive functioning in the last several years. And Meredith and I, being in the roles that we are, have spent a lot of time going to a number of different workshops on executive functioning. And then we came across this workshop, which was very enlightening because it talked about executive functioning through a developmental perspective, which may mean nothing to laymen, but to us, it made so much sense. And then I stopped and thought, it made a lot of sense to me as a parent, not just as an educator, because it helped me understand how my child's brain was developing, how a student's brain was developing, and how my own brain was developing. And that understanding we thought was so rich. We thought we would combine it with the research we already knew about, our own experiences, our own knowledge, and it formed into this presentation that took on a life of its own. So Meredith will go with, what is it?
Gotcha. So just as a brief introduction to what executive functioning is for anybody who's not overly familiar, it's not academics. It's not intelligence. What it is sort of how those pieces come together. It's the shoelace, it's the conductor. It's not what you know, it's how you show it. And so there's no correlation between IQ and executive functioning. We're not talking about how smart somebody is, but we're talking about how can they pull all of their skills and talents together to really show that and to perform it and just to live it every day, because that's what it comes down to, and that's what we found as well. The definition you see on the bottom tends to be the most agreed upon research-based definition, that you're talking about a cluster of skills. And the fact that it's located in the frontal lobe, and yeah, Steve, you're right, the prefrontal cortex, very nicely done, is important because in terms of that developmental perspective, the brain is the last thing to fully develop, but the front of the brain is the true last thing to fully develop. And it's such an ongoing process. So executive functioning in general is that piece of how you pull everything together. And what the research has shown is that you can define it in anywhere from hundreds of skills to 40 to 8 or 9. And what we've found is that isolating those 8 or 9 key skills has been the most beneficial for us to wrap our brains around, for parents, and for our staff too as well.
So when we look at those first 8 or 9 skills, the first ones that come into focus are the ones that we most likely attribute to someone who would be diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. They are focus and attention, inhibition, and organization. Often they're the ones that we can most readily see, but the other ones are so much more significant in that they also factor into emotional regulation and social skills. Shift. The ability to move freely from one situation to another. We'll say someone is flexible or they're not flexible, they're rigid, ways that we describe people. It's really someone's ability to shift. Emotional control. I love this one being a parent of a 6-year-old and 2 3-year-olds. The ability to modulate emotional responses. I'm still working on that myself, actually. But again, think of how that factors into daily living and what we can accept and not accept, and perspective taking. Initiation, the ability to begin a task or activity and then generate that idea. I would say that this is something that we see our teachers work through with a lot of our students, that a student can really do the activity or the homework or the project, but they just can't get started. Working memory, the ability to hold information in your mind. I'm not going to go too much into that one because that's usually when I turn it over to the psychologist and I pretend she knows more than I do, because that's definitely an area that she focuses on when she really tries to get at the learning of a child. And working memory helps understand what information a child is able to hold. And it is very important in how it plays out in the classroom. The other thing is, I bring these up, planning and prioritization. I think, again, I'm hoping you're looking at these set of skills and thinking to yourself, I got some, or oh my goodness, no, I don't. And I think that's a huge part of where we begin with this presentation, and how we're going to begin it when we start on March 8th, is really having a self-reflection piece of what works for you and what doesn't, what you're good at and what you're not. Because when we talk about executive functioning, as Meredith likes to point out, I'm totally stealing her thunder right now, it does start in the home, and it's a way that we can help shape these skills for our students or fill in them in with strategies. And last is self-monitoring. It's the ability to monitor one's own performance and measure it against the standards of what is needed. Definitely a difficult skill, and I think one that many of us in our adulthood are still working on. And Meredith is going to tell you a little bit about why we're still working on some of these skills.
So in talking about that developmental perspective, again, this is the slide that, as anybody who has sat through some of our presentations before, we leave this one up for as long as possible for one really, really big reason, is that if you're looking, what you're trying to find is that mature brain is those deep purples and the blues, and the areas of reds on the one end and then moving towards that green is what you're talking about, where it's not fully developed yet. And so that front piece is really the last part to develop, but the box is really where many of the executive functions lie. And what we have there is a 5-year-old brain. And what we know about the way that the brain develops is that there's a huge spurt in all of these from age 3 to 5. And then there's another spurt from 10 to 16. But if you're thinking about elementary school, you're talking about age 5 to 10. And so the fact that there's not a tremendous amount of brain growth or development, even though that sounds so contrary to everything I want to say about elementary school, there's not a huge gap in terms of that executive functioning piece. But then I think about what we ask a kindergartner to do versus a 3rd grader versus a 5th grader, and how many of those are developmentally appropriate and how different are they. And then typically Sarah and I do this presentation with another of our colleagues who has previously been at the high school, and she's very quick to point out they're not done in that teenage years. They're still really developing those skills. And then I usually say, so at 20 years old, they're putting it on here as fully developed, even 30. Like I'm just getting into the clear zone here, you know, of feeling like maybe I'm intact and functioning as well as I can be at this point. And so looking at how it develops across the lifespan and making sure that the expectations that we have for our students are appropriate for their age across each of these skills. Sarah and I'm jumping ahead a little bit to the end, but we were also a part of a group over the summer that looked at the developmental framework for executive functioning, social skills, and sort of those emotional regulation skills. And we kept trying to figure out why this didn't already exist, why there isn't a framework for what these look like across the lifespan. And it's because there's such a range in what this development looks like, is that it's hard to say at 5 versus 6 versus 7 versus 8. There's pieces of it, but you're going to have some of these things take place across that entirety of a 5-year span in a child. So this is the one we like to focus on, just to keep in mind that we're not talking huge differences from 5 to 10 or 11, but yet our expectations grow in such a paramount way over that time to make sure that we're keeping with what should be appropriate for our students.
Kristen, our third person who usually comes in, also likes to point out that teen brain, they're driving, and it's so not developed yet, which is a little scary.
So thinking about the brain then, and thinking about the presentation that we've given to staff and that we'll be presenting to parents, a lot of what we focus on is what it looks like when everything's working well. What is typical development of executive functioning? But part of our perspective, being in a school, being in special education, on the child study teams, is knowing that anything at all that affects the brain is going to somehow affect executive functioning. It could be one of those skills. It could be a variety of them. And we know about our students that they each have their own strengths, but understanding that these are conditions we see every day. 20% of children have an anxiety disorder. That's just part of it. That's something that exists within the levels of the brain. That's something that would affect their executive functioning, at least in some way. When we're talking about those differences, we're talking maturationally, structurally. Their brains are different, and you're looking at then a correlated delay in executive functioning. So if a child has a diagnosis of ADHD, some of their skills can be up to 30% delayed or 2 to 6 years behind their peers. So now go to that 10-year-old brain and think about where they were, and now put on a 30% delay, and what are we really asking children to do? And making sure that we're meeting them where they are to move them forward for where their starting point is.
Can I ask you a question before you move on? So now I know you're in special education, and I noticed that the screen that you just had showed a lot of children with learning disabilities, but children who are developing according to plan may also have executive functioning issues, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
I just wanted to make that clear.
Great point.
Thank you.
So when we brought up that list, right, even our typical developing students, I'm imagining some of you see struggles with that, and these are, teachers come to us with these concerns, even though they don't have an IEP, even though they haven't been brought to INRS. So they're out there because for whatever reason, a child may be struggling, or it might be a weakness of theirs. They might not be very good with emotional regulation, but man, are they organized, focused, and attentive. And so when they're not good with their emotions, that may stand out. And there just hasn't developed because, as Meredith was saying, there's that range of time that it takes.
The other thing that's good to point out, too, that the way we structured the list for you all was just a way that it made sense to us in terms of explaining it tonight. But there's a lot of people who present that list of those top 9 skills in a different order, and it's the order that you typically see it develop. So something like self-monitoring, something like goal-directed persistence, you can call these different things. Those are among the last to develop. And then typically you see something more like sustained attention and inhibition as some of the earlier ones. If you think about when your children, not mine, first learned that delayed gratification, that's the very beginnings of executive functioning skills. So you're also going to see them develop sort of along a different trajectory as well.
One last.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you find in any of these studies that there's a divergence at all in the progression across genders, or is it pretty similar across gender?
It can be a little different. I mean, female brains operate a little bit differently than male brains in general. But part of it is that you'll see the brain mature in a different way, and like some of the expression of these skills can be different. So middle school girls, or really that 10 to 13-year-old, a good example is that they think everybody's talking about them all the time, and that's because they're developing that self-talk and that self-monitoring skill. That's when starting to emerge there. But that's where a lot of that drama comes from, because if I'm thinking about myself all the time, surely everybody else is, right? So there is a difference in terms of what you would see emerging as an area of strength or weakness for girls and boys.
And it is slightly behind, right? Yeah. Boys are slightly behind. So where has this taken us? As Mickey had pointed out, we have done professional development, first with the child study team, and then also it was offered almost a year ago to numerous faculty members through a professional development. We did present to the Student Achievement Committee. I think that was about a year ago also. We saw you all. And then we had the development of the social, emotional, and executive functioning curriculum. That took place this summer. Meredith had alluded to it. That group was made up of counselors, teachers, child study team members, speech pathologists from the various elementary schools, and we did attempt to map out executive functioning along with social and emotional development, where we again attempted to say by the age of or at the end of third grade, this is what some of those expectations should be and ways to help facilitate those interventions or facilitate those skills. And next up, March 8th, at 7 o'clock at Littlebrook Elementary School, we will be presenting to parents. And we are extremely excited about this because, as we said before, it all really begins in the home. The development of executive functioning starts from infancy, and it really can be promoted with many strategies and interventions in the home, and expectations, too, of what parents have for their child, as well as teachers. So we hope to see you there for the full-on performance, which will last probably about an hour plus. We also, I think we were given about 15 to 20 minutes, and I think we have some time for questions if anyone wanted to ask or have us expand on anything or comment. Yes.
I actually do. We worked with my son, Aaron Shartman, last year, and he had a great experience with you, and I've sometimes polarized locally because of the whole charter school thing, but we could not be happier with the education that our 4-year-old is getting at the self-contained Riverside Handicap Classroom. But I wanted to ask, just, because hindsight is 20/20, and Aaron was my third child, and I didn't know what I didn't know with my first. I hadn't hung around hog schools. I didn't know that it was possible at age 3 to have the school district test your child if you started looking at things were a little off. And I wonder now at how differently things might have gone, and whether I would actually be a PCS opponent if they had gone differently. And if there was a way just to do community outreach, whether it's through an ad in the paper, through mailings to preschoolers, anything like that, to say that this does exist, because some of us, as educated in communities as this is, just don't know.
So funny you should mention newspapers. This presentation has been advertised in some of our local papers, I believe. But more importantly, I think where we've tried to do a lot of the groundwork in terms of those connections and making sure is through some of the community preschools and making sure that they know that we exist and that we're there to serve your children and their children to make sure that the services are available who those need it. So that's where I think a bulk of the work has been done already, is just trying to establish those connections.
My son was in a daycare, so he might not have.
But it is a good point too that and I think we actually have seen that as some of the community members have become more aware, we have seen a big increase in our preschool population within the last two years or so. I mean, we opened up a new classroom just 2 years ago, so I feel like word is starting to be spread a little bit further, but I think there's always more work that could be done.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Liz.
I had a question about the curriculum framework. What's the plan for that? Is that for all students or just special education students?
So it's all students. It is a work in progress right now. So it's not a completed project. But what we really did over the summer was gather a little think tank within the Princeton Public Schools and pull lots of research together to look at those identified executive functioning skills, and then a similar number in terms of your interpersonal skills and your intrapersonal skills. So the emotional regulation, but also the social skills, to say what it should look like grades pre-K to 5. And that's where the focus has been so far. But that is what our age-appropriate expectations across that span. So general education students as well as our special education students, in terms of what teachers can expect, what parents can expect, and then along with that, if the teachers or parents do notice a difference, there's a resource guide with what interventions are appropriate. One of the big pushes, just using common language for how we talk about these skills and how we can best support students. The goal from now is to take it to each of the elementary schools to start training the staff on it, is really the next step, or administrators first, then staff. It is a work in progress, but it is all students.
Okay, well, that's great. So I just wanted to reiterate what you said, it's the special ed PTO is hosting it. It's tomorrow at Littlebrook. There's parking in
No,
the.
no,
Oh,
not-
I'm sorry.
Daphne, don't do
Next
that
Wednesday,
to us.
March 8th. My mistake. It's
not
next
ready yet.
Wednesday, March 8th, at 7 to 8:30. And there's parking is available in the front and back lots, as well as on Magnolia Lane.
Yes.
But I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that it is, all parents can benefit from hearing what's about this.
And our goal is to hopefully, we really hope that all the parents can take home strategies that they can use where they see their child may need a little bit extra help in a certain area. So that's really the goal for us, that you are able to walk away with strategies to use in the home.
Well, and I think this is great. Like, just going to Pat is always, we're always talking about programs that we implement that really aren't a big cost to the district, but will really have, could potentially have a huge impact. And my son personally worked with Meredith and on executive functioning, and it really, when he got to the middle school, he didn't have any trouble with organization. And, I know other children who didn't have your services, struggled with that. So I've seen personally the firsthand benefit to that. So, and again, you're bringing this to the general education population is a big benefit that is really at a nominal cost, right? So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a question on that too, in terms of the curriculum that you're developing. It seems to me as a parent, when I was at a middle school children or even elementary school children, a lot of these executive functioning issues for us came out of homework and turning in homework and doing the homework and repeating things, multiple times, and all that was a big challenge. And at the time, I think there wasn't as you say, a shared vocabulary about that, and so some teachers would be more sympathetic and others would be less, that say, hey, he didn't turn it in, so we got a 0. Well, it's in his bag. Can you ask him for it? No, that's his job. So, how do you think that awareness has changed, through your professional development? Do you think that you've actually moved the needle? Because it's great to have the parents, but if the parents are all speaking the language and the teachers aren't, then
Well, we started with the
haven't really
teachers.
gotten anywhere. Yeah, that's great.
But I do. I think that a lot of it was just the feedback that we got. We did February 12th of last year. We did 4 sessions, each an hour long, with staff across the schools in the district, middle and high school. And we had some staff who individually, after each one, would come over and say, "So wait a minute. If I've got a class and I've got freshmen and seniors in it, you're saying I should have different checkpoints for long-term assignments?" Yes. That's exactly what we're saying.
And honestly, Patrick, we heard a lot from the middle school teachers. I think it was very eye-opening, especially in terms of the way that brain develops, to see that there was not that much of a difference and what those expectations should or shouldn't be, and then how we can break it down. So if homework getting out of the backpack is the problem, then how can we help facilitate that? And so yes, I think it was really, really beneficial, and it started that language.
To see the struggle with homework or with organization not as a deficit, but as a developmentally appropriate stage that kids are going through that we need to guide them through.
Yes. Yep.
Great. Well, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we? More questions in the back.
So just with my understanding of, there are some skills that can be used at home to help students. I imagine that this could play into issues of the achievement gap then, of what some students do or don't get in their home. So are there extra efforts being taken to make sure that we reach our full diverse population in Princeton Public School District with these efforts?
To put it blatantly, no, not at this time. And I think when Meredith says that we're in the developing stages, it is really in its infancy in terms of the fact that curriculum was even built. So I think you're bringing up a very good point, that we also then have to get the resources out to all the families, some who may very much need them, to really make an impact.
But if you're also wondering just about advertising, for lack of a better word, for this event itself, it was in the special ed PTO newsletter, as well as the schools newsletters, as well as some of the local newspapers. Neighboring districts were also informed, and there's also supposed to be a robocall, if I have that correct, just announcing the event, so that hopefully we're reaching as many as possible.
In Spanish and English? The robocall? I don't know, possibly.
No, I believe the special ed PTO was putting something out in Spanish also.
Great.
Yeah.
So, One of the things I think even through the high school that kids are facing today in terms of executive decision-making that I didn't face as a kid is all the distractions, the electronics. Is there a part of your presentation about the parents being the parent in terms of the electronics?
All right, I'll share with you the new term that I learned. Most people are familiar with helicopter parents.
Yeah.
The new one that I just learned is lawnmower parent.
Yeah.
Which, and maybe you already know that one, but when you mow down all the obstacles in front of your child and the damage that that can actually do rather than serving a purpose. I think we do address technology in terms of it being a more useful tool at the older ages if there are those constraints on it. How many teenagers are going to forget their planner versus how many are going to forget their cell phone? So how can we use that to our advantage? But this is directed at parents in terms of what strategies they can take away, which I think also includes just some of the hindrances that they might face in the home that perhaps we don't face in school.
I could envision a different presentation on how technology has actually changed the brains of students, because there's a lot of research out there on that, and that would be an interesting conversation as well.
And know that we don't ignore it. I mean, technology is discussed and kind of what the brain does when it's linked into technology versus what it could be doing if it's not and doing other things. So that is talked about, but I can't say it's, directly.
I don't teach your age group. I teach at the high school.
Yep.
And my concern is one of the big things we're facing at the high school is sleep deprivation.
Yep.
And I would contend that one of the reasons is executive functioning as to when to put that phone down and when to put that phone away.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
And something that, Steve, the comment that you said about saying that it's part of the
Developmental readiness, or
The
yes,
dev-
it's not a problem. It's a developmental step.
step.
Right.
Saying that to parents is so eye-opening and incredibly helpful. I was in a welcome address by middle school counselors and advisors and wonderful educators like yourself, and they told us, if you are checking your child's backpack at night, making sure their homework
Right.
is in their folder, and if you are making sure that they do their homework and putting it in the right side of the folder, and if you're making sure that their books are actually off the floor and in their backpack, and if you're making sure that their gym shoes are in their backpack, and then they stopped and they smiled, and I was thinking, yes, 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 got it, and they said, you need to stop, because they are now in 6th grade and they need to fail at that, because now is a good time for them to fail because the risks are low. Because when they get to high school and they fail at these things, the risks are much higher, because sleep deprivation and things like that are going to make the risk
And I think
greater.
Sarah and Meredith actually cover that exact scenario in their presentation, and they will advise parents and teachers, because the same thing might happen in the back of a classroom as the kids are getting ready to go at the end of the day, to stop and help the students reflect, what do you need, in order to be ready for school? What are your classes today? Do you have gym? What might you need? Just so you're not doing it for them, but you're helping them think it through in their minds, because that's what helps them develop that skill.
It was a pivotal moment in the Spawn House, and thank goodness I heard it with my first child. And unfortunately, my second and third child did not get the benefits. Actually, they did get the benefits because I let them fail. It was a beautiful thing. But I can't applaud you enough. I think this is amazing work, and I think it's going to help parents so much to just see that it's a process. And it's really, really exciting stuff. Really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Betsy, did
Right.
you have a question?
I was just going to say something brief, which is that we know job-embedded professional development that's ongoing is really powerful, and that you are local resources here for us, and for teachers who know you're here, and administrators who know you're here, and parents who now know you're here. I just want to thank you. I think that's a really wonderful benefit to our district.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And Stephanie just mentioned to me that if we haven't thought of it already, we might want to videotape the presentation.
Okay.
So, and you know you're going to love that. Sarah, trust me.
Just bring
Yeah.
more theatrics. It's all good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you all.
Yeah. All right, we have, continuing my report a little bit, we're going to have a presentation next month. It's probably not going to be as scintillating and dramatic, but it will be good. It's going to be our demographer. So he's going to be here March 28th, I believe, is our next meeting. We received the initial report from the demographer this past week. The board's had a chance to do a first read of that. So through his presentation, next time he'll take us through his methodology as well as his projections. The simple truth that I think everybody in this room knows is that we're growing as a district, and we need to plan for that. We need to plan for that growth in terms of staff. We need to plan for that growth in terms of space. So we are in the process now of planning our accommodations for next year's growth, but the demographer's report will give us a window into the next 10 years. So I really do encourage people to attend the meeting next month or tune in from home. Quick mention about our program review focus groups. So as the board is aware, we are currently reviewing 3 K-12 programs: science, service learning, and health and PE, health, wellness, and physical education. The committees are moving forward with analyzing best practices and generating a series of recommendations. And this month we will be holding parent focus groups as a way of getting feedback and additional ideas. We have had scores of parents sign up to participate in our focus groups, and we're looking forward to those conversations and the recommendations that they may generate. And finally, before I conclude, just a few shout-outs. Last month I mentioned that the PHS Science Olympiad would be competing at the state championships, and I understand that's coming up Friday? When is it? Tuesday. So tonight I get to share that our middle school Science Bowl team is actually headed to nationals. So they placed first at the New Jersey regional competition that was held at Princeton Plasma Physics Lab earlier this week, February 24th, last Friday. That team will now be competing at the U.S. Department of Energy National Science Bowl in Washington, D.C. from April 27th through May 1st. The Science Bowl tests our students' knowledge in all areas of science and math, including biology, chemistry, earth science, physics, and energy. So congratulations to our students and to their advisor, Mr. Bill Merritt. And some athletic shout-outs. Our students continue to shine. Our boys and girls basketball teams made it to states, as did our ice hockey team, which won its first game to advance to the next round. We have 2 district champions in wrestling, James Verbeist and Alec Bobchin. James achieved 100 wins, first time ever for a wrestler at PHS. Alec will be going on to the state tournament in Atlantic City. Winter track continues to excel, with our boys placing as the Central Jersey Group 4 champions. And at the conference champions for fencing, our girls epee and foil teams won their competition, and our boys saber team is competing at states for the very first time. Our fencing is a fledgling team, and we're very proud of their results. And I believe, I don't know if I have anything. There might be some other swimming things that I did not get a chance to categorize, but I will make sure that we share those results next time. And I think that's it.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. So, moving along, we need a motion to accept the item I, the motion to accept the harassment, intimidation, and bullying report. And motion Connie, and a second Justin. And can I have a show of hands, please, to accept the HIV report? That is unanimous. Next, we're to item J, the board committee reports. And we start out with, actually, we start with our student representatives. So if you guys would like to go first, and I know you've got a really exciting presentation to talk about, so.
Few things.
Yeah, a few things, right? So off you go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Today, we'd like to take some time to discuss the Stanford Challenge Success Survey that was administered at Princeton High School last December.
So, of the 1,589 students that were in school on the day of the survey, 1,417 students answered most or all of the questions to the best of their ability, giving us an effective participation rate of 89%, which is significantly higher than the targeted 70%.
And students reported an average of 3 hours of homework per night on weekdays. This number was consistent with the one that we found in October survey with 195 students. Interestingly enough, when we looked at the breakdown between grades, we noticed that there weren't many differences across grade levels and that homework levels remained relatively constant across all of the grades. And the schools that did take the Challenge Success Survey had an average homework range that fell between 2 and 2.5 hours per night. So we do see PHS resting slightly above the majority of other schools.
The data also revealed that across grades, average nightly hours of sleep on school days centered at about 6.25 hours. This value is actually slightly higher than the average 6.6 hours of sleep from data we gathered in a survey of 290 students last September. As compared to school districts with similar demographics and AP course load, anywhere in the range of 6.5 hours is relatively consistent. Therefore, this is not unique to Princeton High School, but rather falls in line with a nationwide phenomenon of decreasing amounts of sleep among high schoolers. Based on current research, the National Sleep Foundation recommends about 9 hours of sleep per night for teenagers to promote both healthy mental development and physical well-being. Since Princeton High School falls significantly below the target amount, we hope that the district can generate productive discussions around the topic.
So 2 Fridays ago, Assistant Principal Baxter actually presented the data from the Challenge Success Survey to the teachers at Princeton High School during an in-session day. And she found that they were very eager to understand the statistics and the implications of the conclusions drawn within the report. Discussions quickly surfaced around the room as teachers began conversing about academic workload and stress, generating ideas that they felt would be helpful to student success at Princeton High School. Perhaps this kind of passion and enthusiasm explains why 3.75 out of 5 students at Princeton High School feel that they are supported by their teachers.
Yay. Okay. In the following weeks, the administration will gradually and appropriately release the results of the survey. This is to give our teachers time to generate ideas to respond to the results of the survey. We look forward to seeing what they come up with to better the lives of our students.
And we would like to strongly applaud the administration for taking these issues seriously and making an effort to incorporate student voice. However, we would also like to stress that without continued focus, this survey is just that, a survey. Data gives us the ability to understand a situation, but it cannot fix the problems that are underlying. Those solutions need to come from all of us.
It is vital that changes in Princeton come by means of multilateral cooperation. They cannot simply be from one source, without thorough consideration and discussion. There are so many students and teachers that are coming up with innovative ways to make our district a pioneer in successful education, but they are not always heard.
And we really do need increased collaboration so that everyone can feel invested in our progress and proud of the things that we do. We each have a stake in the success of our children, our classmates, our students. Change cannot come soon enough, but it must be accompanied by the communication that helps it last.
We hope to create a committee of students, teachers, counselors, and parents alike to ensure change comes from a multitude of perspectives and incorporates opinions of those most affected by the results of the survey. It is critical that all opinions are taken seriously and change comes of this. We hope this can happen as soon as possible to address and solve as many concerns as the survey raised. We are both excited to help brainstorm solutions as well as listen to those proposed by our peers in administration. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. And just to follow up, the Student Achievement Committee of the board will be getting the same presentation that the faculty received and that Brian and Abby and I got from Ms. Baxter on Friday. So that'll be the next Student Achievement Committee on the 24th. And the categories that the survey measured, you talked about homework and sleep. I think engagement, how many students are fully engaged in their learning. Stress was one, mental health, and then there was a category that sort of looked at possible changes to reduce stress and increase engagement. And so there were some of those strategies that students weighed in on, and those two will be shared and fed back then to the faculty as they make some decisions about how to move forward. Okay.
I've got a question for y'all, and it's actually Dr. Carell's statement the folks that were speaking earlier and then what y'all said. And I think about the brain that they showed. And I think of Dr. Carell saying, you know, can they put down their cell phones effectively? And I think of what I see at my own house. And I wonder if you did a study where you said, okay, 2 weeks, we're going to see how much sleep you get, how much studying you do. And then the next 2 weeks, you have to put your cell phone in the kitchen. And then you do your homework. And then they measure how much sleep they get and how much studying they do. And I wonder what those results would be like, and I don't know if you guys want to add that to your tasks.
I think Dr. Carell would very much appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, when the full results when the rest of the data eventually does come out, you will be able to see some of the statistics associated with electronic usage.
Yep.
And there is data that is showing that increasingly students are attached to technology and using technology potentially while doing their homework. But that's also not something that's unique to Princeton High
Correct.
School,
Right.
nor is it unique to students, as I'm sure many of you guys engage in multiple tasks at once at this point.
It's part of our executive functioning.
That is
things,
something
yeah.
that we will need, that is something we should take a look at. And the validity of an experiment, I'm uncertain because I highly doubt students are willing to part from their technology. But yeah, that is something that should be looked at.
Yeah.
Maybe for the pursuit of science, they'd be willing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Brian and Abby. And next, facilities with Chair Daphne Kendall.
Hi, facilities met yesterday here in Valley Road at 7:15. We heard a presentation from the Bill Committee from Riverside, and they're seeking to add, they made a presentation, they're seeking to add Bill Cirillo's name to the building or Riverside School's name. The presentation lasted about 45 minutes. We will continue to discuss this with the committee. The board members present at the meeting all agreed that we would like to honor Bill Cirillo's memory. Bill Cirillo, for those of you who didn't know, he was employed by the district for 30 years, and he also grew up in Princeton. And he passed away too early last year. So the committee, this Bill Committee that is a combination of teachers, parents, and retired staff, are meeting to discuss ways to honor Bill's legacy, and we will continue that discussion. We next spoke about referendum planning. We were waiting on the demographer's report, which Steve mentioned we just received. We are also waiting to hear the outcome of Westminster Choir College and its fate. The demographer, as Steve said, will be at the March 28th board meeting to present his findings. In the meantime, we have referendum planning by our architects that the board had previously approved. They're looking at capacity, mechanical issues, and also hopes and wishes. Well, that's Stephanie, really. No, but you're gathering the hopes and wishes, which did include an ice skating rink. It did. So briefly, yeah. Well, it's a hope, right? A wish. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for to hear about the charter school application and also the status of the Westminster Choir College, we are working on a Plan B. The pre-K is moving or has moved? Will it be moving?
From CP you're talking
Yes,
about?
yeah.
The preschool, yes, we're looking to move
Sorry.
that to Riverside to free up a classroom
Yes.
at CP.
So, because it was determined that in the fall, there will be higher enrollment because of Avalon Bay at CP. So, proactively, there's a plan to move pre-K classroom to Riverside to open up a classroom. And there's also a plan to put Spanish on a cart to open up that classroom as well. So the demographer's final report is due in March, and we should have more information in March on how we will place students in September. We also discussed briefly the pool resurfacing at JW. We're looking into, as a result of the principal's concerns at JW, we're looking into some traffic calming issues on Guyot, as well as a speed bump in the parking lot to slow people down. The next facilities meeting is on Monday, March 27th at 7:15 p.m. And just so the public knows, we moved this meeting to the evening, the facilities committee meetings, to the evening to allow the public to hear about our plan for addressing rising enrollment and plans for our buildings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Daphne. Finance, Justin Duran.
Sure. Thanks, Pat. The Finance Committee met at 6 p.m. on February 27th at the Valley Road School. Pat Sullivan, Connie Witter, Bill Hare, Greg Stankiewicz, myself were in attendance, along with Steve Cochran and Stephanie Kennedy. We reviewed February bills, financial reports, and discussed items for the 2017-2018 budget. We also discussed the health benefit waiver, the balance of the deferred enrollment waiver, and the enrollment waiver. On March 7th, we will host a board budget workshop, which will be held at Valley Road, beginning at 7 p.m. and is open to the public. And then on Thursday, March 16th, we will hold a board meeting on the tentative budget at Valley Road, beginning at 6:30 p.m. The public is welcome and action may be taken. The next Finance Committee meeting will be held on March 27th at 6 p.m. here at Valley Road.
Thank you, Justin. Okay, Personnel, Connie Witter.
Good evening. The Personnel Committee met February 21st from 8:45 to 11:45 a.m. Minutes. The committee reviewed the minutes of January 23rd. Residency case. The committee heard an appeal of initial determination in a residency case in which the student was deemed not to have been properly domiciled in the district. Communications plans. Brenda Sewell. Ms. Sewell highlighted the goals of building bridges internally and externally. This included soup with the superintendent and breakfast with the board. Ms. Sewell also discussed new initiatives, including developing outreach to PHS, alumni, and forming a communications committee. District searches update. Assistant principal has been narrowed down to 3 finalists from 75 applicants.
Assistant superintendent for
I'm sorry.
curriculum. Yes. We have a lot of positions we're hiring for, Connie. That's okay.
2 other searches are also currently in progress. Semifinalists for 85 applicants for athletic director and 175 applicants for high school assistant principal. CJ Pride Job Fair. The district will be hosting the Central Jersey program for the recruitment of diverse educators, or CJ Pride Job Fair, on Thursday, March 16th from 7 to 6:30 p.m. at John Witherspoon School. The Pride Consortium has grown from 5 school districts to currently 17 school districts covering Mercer, Middlesex, Somerset, and Ocean counties. The last job fair attracted over 500 applicants, and a larger turnout is expected this year. February leaves of absence. The committee reviewed the list of February leaves of absence. Related matters. All school districts in New Jersey. The court's decision now requires rice notices to be given to all staff appearing on the personnel agenda. The Personnel Committee also discussed financial matters relating to the district. Next meeting, March 20th, 8:45, Valley Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Okay, policy, Betsy, who's giving, is it Betsy Bagley or Daphne Kendall?
We're alternating.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the policy committee met on February 13th here at Valley Road at 1 o'clock. It was a very productive meeting. We have 5 policies on the agenda tonight for first reading. Policy 1510, American with Disabilities Act. Policy 2415.30, Title I, Educational Stability for Children in Foster Care. Policy 2418, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. 5116, Education of Homeless Children. And Policy 8544, Outstanding Food Service Charges. Some of those are revisions to revisions to new policies that require a first reading. We also discussed policy number 5330.04, administering an opioid antidote policy. This is a new policy, and we discussed it with Mickey Crucifelli. Given the opioid addiction epidemic that's taking place in New Jersey, though not necessarily in Princeton, the committee requested that the district explore what is required for the district to have this antidote available. Mickey advised she will explore grant funding that may be available, including funding for training for nurses and for the cost of the opioid antidote itself. The committee will review this policy again shortly. We also discussed Policy 5516, use of electronic communication recording devices. Ms. Crucifelli updated the committee on the progress of the regulations for this policy, which was revised by the board on December 13th, 2016. She's working on implementing procedures in place for widespread use of electronic recording devices by students who have an educational need. But for now, these devices may be used, subject to case manager approval, by students on an as-needed individual basis. Mrs. Crucifelli is looking to other districts for information on how student privacy and appropriate use is handled. Ms. Crucifelli will meet with the policy committee again when more information is known about its implementation in other districts. We also discussed policy 5200, attendance, and we're reviewing our current policy to ensure we're in compliance with NJDOE requirements. We discussed monitoring attendance at every level and contacting parents when a child has been absent for an extended period of time. And we will be reaching out to the New Jersey School Boards Association for guidance, and Mr. Cochran will reach out to other towns for information about their attendance policies. We also, on the agenda for second reading tonight is Bylaw 0152, Board Officers. New business, we discussed, the policy committee discussed ways to support our undocumented students. The committee also discussed the issue of underage drinking and substance abuse, specifically how it relates to student athletes. We've been advised that student athletes sign a code of conduct or a pledge agreeing to refrain from drug and alcohol use as a condition of playing a sport. However, several board members have been advised by parents that this practice is not consistently enforced. The committee asked the superintendent to discuss this issue and the concerns of the committee with the Princeton High School coaches and athletic director before the spring sports season begins. The policy committee will discuss this topic in more detail at our March meeting. We had no public comment, and the meeting adjourned at 2:46. Our next meeting, which is open to the public, most of it, will be on Monday, March 13th at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Can I add one thing to that? Or is that proper form? So,
Sure.
Daphne and I have been approached by parents about the drinking and, saying, yep, my child was at a party and police showed up, alcohol. Oh, microphone. And she just thought that there were a lot of athletes there, and, Superintendent Cochran can only do so much and get the coaches to do so much. If a parent has a house and there's a party going on and the parents aren't there, it seems like the parents need to be a bit more responsible. I don't mean to be preachy or anything, but if you're not at home, you got to know what's going on in your house. So it shouldn't be the place that all the kids go to have the parties because the parents are gone for the weekend. So it's the superintendent and the school can only do so much. And I guess as that picture of the brain on there that we were looking at earlier, and these teens, 16, 17-year-olds and their brain development and lots of alcohol and who knows what else, it just doesn't seem to add up to a good outcome. So, and then one other thing about that meeting that we had that really struck me was the policy on the homeless kids, and we were talking about the undocumented families, and that probably was a huge emotional impact to me because kids could come home from school and find their parents grabbed by ICE. And I think Superintendent Cochran mentioned that there's forms that can be filled out for custody, so the kids could stay in the schools. And I believe I found them on the town webpage. And to me, it's stunning that kids that sit next to my kids could go home in Princeton and find their parents gone. So that was very stunning to me to hear something like that. So one last point, these policy meetings are really fascinating. When I got put on it, I was thinking, is Pat punishing me or what? And but it's really interesting. So, you know, I think they're worth going to if you get the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, and just one other point on policy. Drugs and alcohol have come up a lot in Daphne's report, and I think we've talked, some of us, about taking some time, just like this discussion on executive function, to one meeting soon to have an overview discussion of drug and alcohol abuse, especially given the terrible opioid addiction epidemic that's happening in this country. It doesn't seem to have hit Princeton, but it's interesting, Bill, that you mentioned the alcohol abuse. I have two stories from Andover, Massachusetts. One, there's a really fascinating documentary on YouTube about very high-performing kids, just like ours, who are really being devastated and killed by opioid addiction in Andover, Massachusetts now. And it was done by a student, very powerful documentary. And we're fortunate that it hasn't come here, but I'm afraid that we should be educated as parents about that. And number two, in Andover, Massachusetts, not too long ago, a child was at a party sponsored by parents, and the child fell down the stairs and died. Parents went to jail. So there's a real risk to opening your house to a party for children where alcohol is being served. But again, having the awareness in our community is really important. And so at one point, I think it would be important to address that in our little 20-minute window if we can. Last, student achievement with Betsy Baglio.
So the last meeting, I said we hadn't met since the prior board meeting. We met 3 times since our last board meeting. So I'm going to give you some highlights. Luckily, we did cover a few of the topics more than once. We met January 27th, February 10th, and February 24th here in this room. The student achievement meetings are public meetings, the entirety of the meeting. So we really do encourage the public to come. We discussed some overnight trips that are on our agenda. We also discussed modifications to the way we approve overnight trips, looking in the future at a template submitted by the curriculum office with the information that is needed and having a discussion that way. Mark Shelley, the supervisor of humanities, came to present a revised curriculum for English 4 and AP English 4. We heard about the dual enrollment program with Mercer County College. Ms. CISO Stentz and Mr. Snyder talked about implementing this in September of 2017. We talked in great detail at a few meetings about financial aid for students who need aid for AP testing and how that is communicated clearly and often to students who, as they register for APs, know that that aid is there for them, and we're looking forward to just improving this every single opportunity we get. We had a terrific presentation by the Advanced Topics Advanced Placement Committee from the high school, which was a multidisciplinary committee who came to talk with us about their collaborative work looking at this question of advanced topics versus advanced placement or some combination there. Brian Dubinsky came twice and talked about the impact test that we currently use for our students. There are new recommendations that say that this test is not valid for children 11 years old and younger. So that affects how we test students at the middle school level. This will also come to our policy meeting next month as well. So we're looking at our policy as well as speaking with our school physicians about the right course of action and how to communicate these changes to parents. He also spoke about a request for the board to sponsor student divers, and we have requested an update at a later meeting. Jennifer Walters and Jason Burr from the middle school came to discuss a new 6th grade campfire program, which is a new leadership opportunity for 6th graders. It's a new EP there. We heard about a few research study proposals in January, and also Jeanette Paredes from JW came back to us in February actually last week to give us some update on her work that she had done on teacher engagement at the middle school. We looked at the district calendars multiple times. The school calendar for this coming year is in our agenda to be voted on for the board. We are still looking at 2018-19, but hope to vote on that soon as well. Now I'm going to the next set of minutes from the most recent meeting that we had. Eddie Cohen came to our last meeting to talk about new science materials that will be piloted by elementary teachers. He will then come back to share teachers' feedback before we actually make a decision about purchasing them. Art teacher Ashley Kennedy from Riverside came. She has been given $10,000 by the PTO at Riverside, a very generous gift, to create a digital art, to share a new digital art initiative. So there will be iPads and a new printer and other equipment purchased for this. This new medium will be accessible to Riverside students, but she's also very eager to share what she learns with her art colleagues across the district, and that's very exciting as well. They plan to debut this digital art at the art show at Riverside this year. We did discuss preliminary demographic data, which has been discussed a few times, and also a tiny bit of the preliminary results of the survey. So I learned a little bit more from our students here. We are looking forward to a presentation on that in March. So we changed the time of student achievement to actually have more time, and we've also added a meeting. So we will meet on March 8th and March 24th here in this room. Please check the website for the exact times, but the March 24th meeting will be at 11, and I believe March 8th at 10. The public, we really do encourage you to come if you're able. Thank you.
Can I add one more thing, Betsy? As a new board member, I was impressed with the amount of effort that goes into the calendar. It's not just tossed down the stairs and then the dates line up. The amount of discussion about the well-being of the students, when to put things, I was mightily, as someone new, I was mightily impressed at the effort that went into it. So I want to give my appreciation for that.
Okay, thanks, thanks Betsy, and thanks Bill. So, and thank you all. I mean, one of the things that I hope comes through these reports, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of really meaningful work that's going on and change that's going on in our district in terms of making things better for students. I'm so excited about, all of the committees and the things that they're working on really have that in mind, positive change for our students and a better educational experience. So, and I know it takes hours and hours of the people around this table to make that happen, as well as hours and hours from our administrative staff and our teachers, all who have this passion for taking this great district and making it better. So I just wanted to thank you all for all of the work that you've done over the last month. The only one that worries me that I can't get so excited about is finance, and no knock on Justin, but that's the only one that scares me. Other than that, we're really doing some really great things. So with that, I'd like to move to our public forum. This is for agenda items only. If anyone in the audience has a question, comment on any of our agenda items tonight, now's the time to come forward. And again, I'd ask that you just state your name and where you live and anything on agenda items. I don't see any movement in the audience, and so we'll move on to the approvals of some of our agenda issues. And we, as you know, if you've been here or been watching at home, we have a new system which makes things much slower than they used to go. But we'll try our best. If you like procedure, this is your moment to really focus. So this is the first is item L, policies. Number 1 is the first reading. It's not a vote. Just comments on any of the policies up for first reading. Do we have any comments from the board?
Yeah, I have a comment or question. So the outstanding food service charge, and I guess I was getting confused between that one, because there's 2 food ones?
And the regulation. There's a policy and a regulation.
Okay. So with the policy, it seemed really just going after the people for the money?
No, but we're not. So New Jersey,
Okay.
this is a mandatory. Yes, it's a mandatory policy. The state of New Jersey passed a law that requires that we lay out certain provisions of the policy. I guess in some cases, sending your child to school without lunch or money is indicative of poor home conditions that may need further investigation. So it sets out a procedure. It gives parents, they get a first notice, they get a second notice, and one of the things that Betsy and I wanted to add was that we're going to for the next reading, so we're going to add that the notices be provided in the language spoken in the home, so that there's no miscommunication. So this is not directed at people like me who forget to refresh the lunch accounts, but or maybe it is, but also really we're looking out for the children to see if there's something going on at home that we need to look into further.
And then are you expecting the families to pay? I mean, and I guess I'm really sad when I read they're going to get a basic lunch. I mean, it just
Okay,
saddens
because
me.
I had this note as well. I
Yeah.
mean, if we're writing this policy, and I know this is a first reading, so I just asked policy to look at this. If we're going to great lengths, then actually, by law, parents are, by law, they have to feed their children twice a day. So if they're not feeding them breakfast and lunch, they are, by law, under the ground rules of neglect. So this policy is correct. And Child Services does, we do have grounds. So if we're looking at this under the food policy, and we're going to do this, that's fine. But to give the child a lunch that no other child in the school would pick on their worst day, to give them a lunch, are we doing that? Are we doing that to, why are we doing that? Are we doing that because the food services saves money by doing that? Are we doing that because the food services says, look, if we have to give them something, we're going to give them a less expensive lunch? Like, is there grounds for doing that? If there is, and there is an expense for doing that, can we send Hunger Packing or the Education Foundation or the PTO to make up the difference between the cost of that lunch? Because to me, if I was that child, I would either not come to school, not go to lunch, or pack a brown bag full of scarves and say I brought my lunch to school, because there is no way I would shame myself into bringing a lunch because my parents either could not afford to pay or there was a situation. If the school's on it and they're going to address the situation, let's put the child first and not put them in an embarrassing situation because they have a situation, obviously. If the parents aren't paying because they're like, duh, me, and I forgot to send in a check, okay, but let's not embarrass the child for it because the child does not have their hands on the checkbook. So I just don't see our district doing that to a child in any way, shape, or form. If it's a money issue, let's figure out a way to solve the money issue. If it's not a money issue, then why are we doing this? I can't see, I thought about this all day. I can't see a reason to do this. I think it's an embarrassment to the child. This policy really bothers me.
Okay, so and I appreciate the feedback.
And it's a first reading,
yeah, it's a first
so
read.
we can't fix it tonight, but it really bothers me.
No, but we will fix it, and I think you and Debbie raised
And
good
sorry,
points.
Debbie, but it's been on my list and stuck to my computer. I was like, don't forget to do this. It really bothers me.
And in our haste to get this policy out, we didn't have a chance to read it over with a fine-tooth comb. But the intent is not to embarrass anyone. I think all communications will be made to the parent in writing via email. And so I hear what you're saying about the lunch. And Stephanie, can you offer more on that?
First of all, this is not targeted at free or reduced students. This is targeted at families that send their kids in and just their meals start adding up and they don't collect. And it's, I also would say Cranberry will have to have this if they don't already have this policy, by the way. Additionally, this is the other option. This was a policy that was given from the state. The other option was no lunch at all.
Yeah. We had a choice.
This is the option we chose. My issue with it is, if we're looking at the end of the policy and we think neglect might be involved, I mean, because the child's not on free and reduced lunch doesn't mean a family hasn't
lost a job. There's not a divorce. There's not an abuse situation. There's
Right,
not
but there's,
something going on.
the staff at the schools are aware of those situations.
I
So
just
they're
think
gonna-
it's.
This is,
It's the food part.
But it's the food part.
I appreciate the feedback because actually when I read it, I thought that just means no ice cream and no popcorn. And I sort of looked
Right.
at it with a different lens. So maybe when we go back for a second reading, we say basic hot lunch. But with that, I'm not sure we want, the extras is sort of what I thought we were getting to, was sort of let's give a nutritious lunch. This is also, I think, on some menus called the fun lunch, that kids can choose as an option. So I just sort of, I read it as a basic, but I think at policy, we can certainly go back to this in March
It just
and
sounds
reword
like bread and water.
So what would you like, what would you like to see?
What would that lunch look like?
I mean, I guess I haven't been in a cafeteria in a while. I didn't, I guess I don't want them coming out of there with ice cream but I mean, the lunches are healthy.
Right, yeah, we could
I
just
I
say
just don't want a child to either not come to school because they would be embarrassed. I
That's
don't
a
want
good
them
point. Yeah,
to not get
absolutely.
their lunch because they would be embarrassed. I don't want to shame the child because this is obviously the child is not. I also don't want the child to feel like they're the one that has to forage for the
Right.
money to get the money.
Absolutely.
Well, this is the first
Anyway.
reading, so you guys can take it.
It's a first reading.
We'll think about it, but those are good comments.
What the lunch is, it says the board directs that the student will be provided basic lunch that will contain either sun, butter, and jelly sandwich, fruit, vegetable, and milk, or cheese sandwich, fruit, vegetable, and milk. So for those who don't have the policy in front of them, that's what you're looking at, right?
Right.
Okay, it doesn't sound bad to me,
It
actually.
doesn't, but there's no child in the line that's getting that. They're getting chicken fingers and fries. Just saying. So any kid that's sitting there with that lunch, everyone knows that they didn't pay their bill.
No, and that's not our intent, and so
Right.
we will reword, and we appreciate your feedback, because that's not our intent, and I see how it
I'm
could.
not pointing it at you.
No,
It's a first
but-
reading.
No, but, if a policy's gonna be
But we
read.
write the policy
Right.
that when Patrick read at the very beginning what our job is to write policy. I just want to make sure we're writing good policy.
No, and they're
Okay.
good points that we will
Good.
incorporate.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the first reading policies on item L1? Okay, thank you. More? That's okay. No, it's fine.
So the one where we talked about, microphone? Oh, sorry. The homeless and foster children, and I'm assuming, and you guys had mentioned something about all this coming up with all of our immigration, our current issues.
No, that's separate. It's separate.
That's a different one? Okay.
We in the policy committee, we're seeing on the news that ICE is increasing their raids, and we just discussed it generally as it might affect our students. The community has come together on this issue. These other policies these changes are mandated, and they're not brand new, but they switch policies around. Like, for example,
The one that talked about foster children.
Right.
That's what I was kind of focusing on. And I didn't know if that was also including kind of
so that was
any
not,
issues we might be having in the future. Should it? Do we need our own policy for this? I don't know.
That's a good question.
I think it falls under that policy, because if a child was in a foster care situation, temporary or. Sorry. If a student was in a foster situation, a policy would apply. Okay, so it could be temporary, like in a situation where their parents are detained. There are a lot of things that happen when parents are detained, including DCP&P getting involved and making sure that the child is taken care of and that all of their rights are protected.
and the child can continue in Princeton if the foster parent, right?
Right.
Regardless of where the foster parent lives? Is that?
Yes. I mean, that's what it read.
Yeah.
It read whatever's best really for the child.
Yeah. So that's always our intent, is to do what's best for the child.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on then to item L2, second reading on the board officers' policies. Can I have a motion to Justin and a second? Anyone? Betsy? I'm sorry, sorry, Debbie. And all in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay. L3, regulations. No vote, this is just for information. And now, Ms. Kennedy, we're going to do M1 through L12 as one vote, is that correct? That's correct. Okay, so this is, yes?
I don't see 11 and 12. Did you say M1 through M12? Does everyone see?
I see 1 through 11.
I see 1 through 10. Okay. Oh, okay.
Sorry, refresh it.
Thank you.
So I'm changing these things.
So
in
will we
real
get
time.
alerts that stuff is added, or?
It's a live document.
Okay.
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 So when we were talking about it, I was trying to adjust that so that we could.
okay.
Right, okay.
So that's,
No, that's great.
so.
Okay.
Okay.
I can change that, so it's all the attachments will be there, but it'll be one resolution.
Okay.
If you want to do it that way. Because then you could still pull out, like, well, I don't want to do attachment, whatever.
Okay.
All right, I do have one question.
All right. Do we need a
For Lou.
Oh. Motion first before we discuss, so can we have a motion to, motion Betsy and second Justin? Okay.
So for 7, the non-athletic, no, I'm sorry, the other personnel actions. So for the PE monitor that we talked about, I see they want to do 2 people at 325.
Yeah, they're splitting the stuff.
Okay.
What number is that?
Sorry, 7.
That was.
So I was just curious, they changed it, or,
No, it's the same amount, they're just dividing it with 2 people.
and they feel they'll be able to work together? I mean, the whole idea, it seemed, is they wanted one person, so they could organize it.
Well, they'll be working together. So they'll be working together, but they're both splitting the number of days that they're doing it.
And the total is 650. I had remembered 750. Is that because it didn't start?
Right.
In.
It's prorated.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on M1 through M12? This is a roll call vote. Ms. Kennedy, will you take the roll?
Patrick Sullivan,
Yes.
Betsy Baglio,
Yes.
Debbie Bronfeld,
Yes.
Justin Duran,
Yes.
Bill Hare,
Yes.
Daphne Kendall,
Yes.
Fern Sproul,
Yes.
Gregory Stankowitz,
Yes.
Connie Witter,
Yes.
Evelyn Spahn.
Yes.
Unanimous, thank you.
Okay. Your question, Steve?
Mr. Goldstein, did you have any comments you wanted to make on retirees? Did we get to that point?
We
No.
did, it's not too late to. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. For those of you who are watching at home or wondering, we have this is our second board meeting of using this new technology that is supposed to be paperless and much more efficient. And we are going through what is the proverbial implementation dip as we come to understand how to use this technology in the most efficient way possible. But we will get there. We are determined. Okay.
Well, we have three retirees on the board agenda tonight. We'll start with Pam Solomon, who's a bus driver, and she's worked in the district for over 30 years. And transportation is one of the more challenging jobs in the district, but Pam has basically done a great job of working with parents and students and the transportation of various supervisors over the years. And she's been known at Valley Road as Miss Transportation. So if you want to know something about transportation, Pam's the one to go to. And that title is held in high regard both by the people she works with and also the students who know her very well. And she has earned this retirement very well for driving the bus for 31 years, and we wish her well. And I think it'll be a a big loss to the district, yes.
I just want to add, our children have been fortunate enough to have had Pam as a bus driver. She is a phenomenal, caring person, loves the children. We're sad to see her retire. She's just been such a delight to have. And most importantly, she's gotten them there safely and home safely.
Our second retiree, not in any order, but just in, I guess, in length of service, Adele Hagedorn has worked in the district for 35 years. She has worked on numerous committees. She is a mainstay at Riverside. She knows where all the bodies are buried at Riverside and throughout the district. But more important, she is kind, she is caring. She has taught so many students over the years how to read and read well and understand. And there's a big difference between being able to read and having reading comprehension. And she has brought that to light. And she's a silent but very powerful force at Riverside. And she has been very gracious over the years with the time that she shared, not just with students and parents, but with other staff and helping other individuals when they were in need. And she has gone through some losses recently, but beyond it all, she's always maintained a balance of being able to encourage students to achieve and grow. And I know that Sarah's in the back, and I know she would add a million more words than what I'm saying right now, but she is going to be hugely missed and a lovely person, but more or less the consummate professional in an area of education that is so well needed. And so, Adele, we will miss you. John Baxter. John Baxter and I enjoyed baseball. Unfortunately, John roots for the Yankees and I root for the Mets. And with that said, we always appreciate this time of the year because pitchers and catchers report. And but John Baxter has been reporting to PHS every day for the last 19 years, I believe, almost 20. And what he has done with students and how he has enlivened their knowledge of social studies. Not everybody is thrilled to get into that social studies classroom, but Patty Manhart knows John so well in the last couple of years, and she knows the impact John has had, not just as a teacher, but as a person. And also he has been an advisor. He was the former advisor to the Model UN, and he still does a lot of good things, and he has made his mark known. A lot of times board members, and I know Steve and a couple of our negotiating members know John for the negotiator that he has been for the PREA during the PREA negotiations. I have had the pleasure of working with him during all these years, going back to our negotiations during the strike in 2002. But through it all, John has been knowledgeable. He has been professional. He has basically advocated very well on behalf of the PREA membership. He is a tough guy to negotiate against. But I'll tell you what, deep down, he's in love with this district and in love with what he does in social studies. And, we talked about this a little bit, and he basically feels that he has made his mark and is ready to let the next generation come on and do theirs. But, John will miss you. And whenever, February rolls around, I'll always think of you and know that it's always time for pitchers and catchers in Princeton.
Thank you,
Great.
Lou.
Thanks, Lou.
I do have to say just a word about John. As Lou implied, as he mentioned, I first knew John through contract negotiations, and I will say that John was brilliant, fair, and formidable. But John was not just a negotiator; he was a true educator. And I remember last June, the senior class dedicated their yearbook to John. And they did so standing out underneath the flagpole in front of PHS. And one student speaking about John turned to him and said, because of you, I'm inspired to vote. And John looked at him and said, and because of you, I am inspired to teach. And that's who he was. A true educator, someone who cared deeply about students, and someone who will continue to affect the lives of our young people long after he retires. So we're very grateful for his service.
Great, thank you. Moving on then to item N. Now, Ms. Kennedy, do we have to do this one
This one we're gonna have to do this time.
at a time?
Bear with us, those of you watching at home.
Might be a good time to go out and get some popcorn. Okay, so we're going to need a motion and a second for each one of these, and we're going to vote on them in series. So, right, so can I have a motion for item N1? Justin, second Betsy. All in favor? Show of hands. And that's unanimous. Okay, so how fast can I go, Stephanie? Okay? Okay, item N2. I need a motion and a second, please. Connie and Justin. Should we just have the same people do all of these motions in seconds, and then it might save you some entry time? Oh, is that right? It probably violates some. No, we didn't. So all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. That's number 2. Okay. Number N3. I need a motion. Connie, and second, Daphne. Okay. Yeah, and so we had a. Oh, so you're still on 2.
Oh, good.
So we had a motion and a second on 3. So did we have a modification?
There was one that was revised.
Yes. This is going to be revised. And how are we going to revise it?
It's revised from the previous agenda. So if you look at the item.
Quick thing, what's listed up there is 03, I believe.
All right.
N3 was the ESEA Accountability Action Plan.
Yes.
03 is professional consulting.
What am I, in the wrong section?
You are,
We're
yeah.
on
We're on,
Thank you. So sorry. Okay.
we should be on N3.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Right.
And starts with
N1
the-
was the calendar.
Yes.
There's no discussion.
Correct.
There's no count, there's no discussion. Right.
So let me go back to, sorry about that. That was Justin, memory, and Debbie. That was unanimous. Now we're on educational consulting. And again, am I on?
No, you're right. N2. That was Justin and me, though. Oh.
Justin and Betsy?
N1 was, yeah.
And one was?
Yeah. The calendar was Justin and then me.
So we're on N1, Steve.
I went out to get popcorn.
Yeah. Okay, so are we caught up now?
Okay, so it's Justin and Betsy on the calendar.
Yes.
Correct.
Everybody unanimous. And educational consulting services, taking a motion from, anybody? I think it was
Connie. And I think Evelyn seconded. Evelyn, you seconded this one?
I know,
Correct?
I know, she's not.
She just did now. Connie just did.
Yeah, Connie did.
It was Connie and then Justin, or was it Justin and Connie?
Because that's where they want to keep you two running for the rest of the gamut.
You have to stay.
And then, voting, and that was unanimous, right? So now we're on accountability action.
So on this one, we had a motion and a second, okay? So do we,
This was a motion by
It was Connie and Daphne. But we want to discuss this. 3. Okay. So the question is, we have now, I guess, we've seen the plan, but not for very long. We just got the plan. And so how, if at all, would we like to amend this resolution?
No, that one's fine.
Oh, this is fine,
It's-
okay.
Yeah.
So you have another question on this one?
So I just
Okay.
wanted, I just wanted Steve to just provide, a brief summary of why this is in the packet and why this is needed.
Oh, because we had lower participation rates at our middle school and high school in the park for the past year. We had it in the prior year and had to submit a plan. So anytime a school falls below the 95% participation rate, which is the target rate for park, they have to submit a plan showing how they may remediate that. So that's what we took a look at and putting together. My apologies. Yeah, thank you.
So this is our plan for the next year?
Correct, yes.
To get more students to participate in the test.
Okay. If they don't,
Then we may write another plan next year. I think as people, over time, as we see the value of park as a measurement tool that helps us evaluate our programs and our students in meaningful ways, that we'll have greater participation. If there's a change in some of the laws that they're considering now, we may see greater participation, but we're fine at the elementary school levels. It's the middle school and the high school where we could see some improvements.
And just as a point of information, this is required by federal law.
It is required by law, yes. Thank you.
Right. Okay, any other questions on N3? We just need a vote. All in favor? Any abstentions? No. Okay, now we're on N4, student field trips. May I have a motion? Justin, and a second. Vern. All in favor? Okay, any abstentions or opposition? No, it's unanimous. Okay, there's number 5, N5, also student field trips. Motion.
Wow, this one's going to China, is that right?
Yes.
We need a motion to discuss.
Well, first, just a motion?
Motion.
Yes, Betsy, and second, Justin. Now, if you'd like to discuss.
Sure. I had mentioned in student achievement, we're changing slightly the way we discuss field trips, overnight trips. We had asked for slightly more information on the international robotics competition regarding if students are unable to pay, how they will be funded. We want to be sure that all students are able to go regardless of the cost. And they did have a line in the application about fundraising, but our question was, if you don't meet your fundraising goals, how will all students be able to go? So given that the date is so soon after our next meeting, if we vote on this, I would just say we're voting on the contingency that all students will be able to go regardless of the cost of this trip.
Ms. Bagley, is this for the Computer Robotics Club?
International robotics competition in Hartford?
Is this for the high school, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe that they have already raised over $2,000 of their target $3,000, so they're very close.
That's terrific. Thank you.
Okay. So are we ready for a vote on number 5? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? No, it's unanimous. Now we're on N6.
Oh, I have some information
Okay.
from Acting Assistant Superintendent Roche on this. So we can actually go ahead and submit the plan tomorrow to the state. This is the Title I plan plan for the use of $49,500 from the federal government to help at-risk 4-year-olds. And then we can submit the approval from the board next month. So the plan, as long as the plan is submitted by the deadline, which is March 1st, then the approval can come later. So we actually don't need to
We don't need to do this, perfect.
vote on number 6.
Okay, so how do we do that? Do we need to,
Do we
just
need to
strike it from the agenda?
I don't know if we amend, do we have to amend our, we have to amend our initial motion?
No, we just move it.
I'm working with you, okay.
Somebody, Justin, okay. And then Vern, and then, I can remove vote, let's see. I think there's a way to table.
You spoke for all of us, Fern.
This was your idea, Stephanie.
It was, yeah, it was fine, thank you. I want to add a motion to the table.
Yeah.
Spiking on the union.
Yeah, oh.
Okay, so now I want to do, we're going to table this motion, so I need a first and a second to table the motion.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Right. Last motion and take a vote.
All in
To ta-
favor of tabling, this is a vote to table the motion. Unanimous.
Save it, okay.
Mhm.
Is this like a requirement that we do this? A state requirement that we have this technology?
No. But I'm trusting it will be better in the future.
Okay.
Okay, next.
Okay, N7. We need a motion, Justin, and a second, Connie. Yes.
Stephanie, I have a question. Is it typical to have to bid on curricular materials?
The reason why this is happening is because it's a large purchase, and it wasn't clear what they were purchasing or whether it was copyrighted. So if it's copyrighted, I mean, it should be, but nobody could answer that question for me because nobody knew exactly what.
Okay, so
program was-
typically we don't have to bid on curriculum.
Curriculum, correct.
But we're covering our bases
Right.
here.
This
All
is
right.
in case we need to use this process. If we don't need to use the process, we
Right.
don't need to use it.
Good question.
But if
Okay.
I don't get it in the cycle, then we have
Right.
to wait another.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we had a motion?
If I have Justin and Connie on this one.
Yes.
and then I
Okay.
vote.
On favor? Unanimous? Okay. So we are now at number 8, which is the last item in agenda N.
Yes.
So we only have about 30 or 40 things left.
Hey. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to officially give our student board reps the opportunity to exit now and go home and get some sleep, because you only have 6 1/4 that you're allotted.
That's right. And how many hours of homework a night? Was it
3.5,
3
3 to 3.5.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion for N8. Connie and Daphne. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Okay, and so now, Ms. Kenny, I'd like to ask, is there a way for us to, well, actually, O isn't so bad, but P is pretty onerous in terms of the number of items that we have. And is there a way to do this in bulk, or?
Let's do O, and then there's
Thought you were gonna ask for a motion to send our students.
Yeah, we can do that too. Yeah.
Let's get through, we wanna get through O real fast?
Okay, so let's go through O quickly, and then hopefully we can do M in one fell swoop. Sorry, P in one fell swoop.
If Justin and Betsy, motion, first and second it, we can move on. Cause I kinda did that already. Okay then.
Okay.
That's when I had jumped in.
Okay, this is O1.
Yep.
We've got a motion and a second. All in
Yes.
favor? Okay, thank you.
Wait a minute, let me make, O2. One second, I think I jumped ahead again. So we have Connie and Justin on that one, on O2. Does Connie want to move it and Justin second it?
Yes.
Everybody be in favor? Okay. Now we can go to O3. And then I need a first. Second.
Debbie, she raised her hand. No, honestly, she did.
Yeah. Thank you, Evelyn.
Okay, all in favor? We've done, this is, okay. And one more. This is O4. Can I have a motion and a second, please? Daphne, Betsy? All in favor? Thank you, unanimous.
Okay, so now we go to P.
We go to P, which is, I believe,
Okay, so that's
13.
13 items long. So can we do P as one motion? You're going to have to do some adjustment.
yeah,
Stephanie,
I can-
and you,
yeah, if you,
of which one?
5.
5.
So I can-
Just there?
Yeah.
Okay, so actually, we're going to do this, and can we do it and you catch up on it? Are you there in terms of the technology?
I'm ready for P1. What do you want me to do?
Well, I'd like to do P1 through 4 in one fell swoop, if that's okay.
Okay, hold on a minute.
If we do, is it?
Yeah, because we have an extension on 5. Oh, I see, just in one.
Oh, yeah, I can do that, yeah.
Okay, so if we can do agenda items P1 through 4 and 6 through 13. Have a motion for that. And firm.
You raise your hand faster, it doesn't move it along. Thank you for trying.
All in favor? All in favor, thank you, unanimous. And now going back to P5, we have a motion. Justin, second. How about Fern? Thank you, Fern. I know we're all exhausted raising our hands, but, and this is P5, all in favor. Okay, thank you. Any abstentions? That's none. Thank you. Okay. And then. We're old business, new business, and any, there's none on the agenda, anything to talk about. And then finally, agenda item R, our final public comment session, for this is on open topics, any topic at all. Drummer.
As a reward for staying so long, I have dessert.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery.
Rod Montgomery from William Patterson Court, just a taxpayer. I missed This Week in Education. I hope production will resume soon. I applaud the shift
of agenda publication to boarddocs.com.
Thank you.
But, well, now, the reason I applaud it is because I find it easier to skip to the parts that I am interested in. I hope you will put students to work populating the library and policies sections in the automation.
We haven't gotten there yet.
I understand. Just, this is, all right. As far as your exploiting the technology to slow up proceedings, you still have a long way to go to match the United States Senate. But you can work on it.
We're working on it, yeah.
I applaud the careful, thoughtful work of the policy and student achievement committees that I've had the honor to observe. In particular, I applaud the work of the faculty committee that has been visiting the Scarsdale district to look at their advanced topics courses as an alternative to advanced placement. I hope this work will continue, but I'd like to mention several points from the presentation at the Student Achievement Committee that struck me. Scarsdale is a far wealthier district than Princeton, particularly in faculty-student ratio and physical space. So you can't just port their template and expect it to work. You don't have the resources.
And their tax levy's double. They get double, their budget's double from.
That, yeah, just so.
Yep.
Second, their shift from AP to AT produced no reduction in student stress. So you're not going to get that, which I think you all were hoping for, just by making that shift. You're going to have to design the AT courses carefully to reduce, if you want to reduce the stress level. And finally, the Princeton faculty seem to plan, from what I heard, to keep the old AP Computer Science course, which is based on the Java programming language, which I abhor, and to replace the new AP Computer Science Principles course with an Advanced Topics Computer Science course. This seems to me to be exactly backward if you aspire to make AP Computer Science more accessible to a wider variety of students for possible reduction in college expenses by getting AP credit. As I've mentioned before, learning computer science based on the Java programming language is like doing driver ed in tractor-trailer trucks. You don't use tractor-trailer trucks for driver ed, and if you have an alternative, you shouldn't ought to be using Java programming language to teach computer science to high school kids. Okay. Strategic plan. The Princeton Packet published an interview with Board President Sullivan, bylined by Erica Chase Wida, W-I-D-A, dated 12 January 2012, quoting Mr. Sullivan as saying, "I fully support the implementation of the strategic plan adopted by the board." What strategic plan adopted by the board? I've been watching and I haven't seen one.
It was adopted several years ago, Mr. Montgomery. I believe it might have been a year and a half ago now. Is that right?
It wasn't adopted. It wasn't adopted formally. It was proposed. It was developed, but there hasn't been an adoption in terms of a vote, as far as I recall.
Okay.
Yeah,
I maybe,
but
maybe
it is.
I
We
misunderstood.
Right. Yeah.
Is there a document
I have seen Superintendent Cochran waving a document around.
Yes, there is.
as
There is a
draft.
document. It's actually, and it is driving a lot of the work that we're doing in the district. And I'm glad you bring it up because it's the work that we really intended to be doing in December and January. There were other things that, as you indicated when you were talking about strategic plans and the need to be flexible as we implement them, there are things that come up in the life of a district that require us to deviate from our current direction and move in a different one. So we've been doing that for the last few months as we've been working through the charter school expansion application. The strategic plan is still there and is still driving much of the work. And I had actually just spoken to Board President Sullivan about bringing the board together for a retreat at some point to actually go over it one more time with them and then begin to make it public. We are looking forward to doing that.
All right, so there is not a strategic plan formally approved by the board. Is that correct? Do I understand
Through a
that?
vote, I would say no, because I would consider we have goals that we've put out publicly. We
Yes.
have objectives that we've put out publicly. It's the action items to achieve those objectives that has not been formally presented.
Okay. Well, on the homepage of the district, there is a link labeled Strategic Plan.
There is.
Which points to a separate website, PPS
Vision.org.
vision.org, which is apparently about 2 years stale.
Year and a half.
Okay. Contains a bunch of goals which were adopted by the board, some as policy, some as a separate resolution. And it lists some action items in progress. One is of particular interest to me, which was the mobile access program to provide home access to computing and
Right,
communications.
for those who might not have internet access or computers.
To all students.
Right.
On the ppsvision.org website, there is an announcement of its commencement as a pilot program and a promise that it would be rolled out. But I have not seen or heard any indication of further progress. Now, it is of perhaps only academic interest to myself because it's not going to change my tax bill. But I wonder whether the board tracks progress on initiatives that have been begun. Has the board, I invite the board to ask itself whether the board has been tracking progress on the mobile access program, and if it has not, then maybe it should be tracking progress.
Wonderful point. And I actually will make sure that I bring that to the board at the next meeting because we have a committee of people that's looking at the tracking that and giving updates every month and making sure that students who need those computers are getting them and need the access. And we probably about have 150 or so that are out there at this point. And I'm very proud of the work that's being done and the students who are being served. So I think it would be something to celebrate, and I'll be happy to bring that to a future meeting.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now for dessert.
Thank you.
In a sense, I should not be saying this because I am not Admiral McRaven. I am not even a Navy SEAL. But he's not here, and I don't think there are any SEALs here, so you're stuck with me. In May of 2014, Admiral McRaven, who at that time was head of the United States Special Operations Command, gave a commencement address at University of Texas titled Life Lessons from Navy SEAL Training. I'm going to share one of his lessons with you this evening, and it provides the theme for the dessert. Every day during SEAL training, you were challenged with multiple physical events: long runs, long swims, obstacle courses, hours of calisthenics, something designed to test your mettle. Every event had standards, times you had to meet. If you failed to meet those standards, your name was posted on a list. And at the end of the day, those on the list were invited to a circus. A circus was 2 hours of additional calisthenics designed to wear you down, to break your spirit, to force you to quit. No one wanted a circus. A circus meant that for that day you didn't measure up. A circus meant more fatigue, and more fatigue meant that the following day would be more difficult, and more circuses were likely. But at some time during SEAL training, everyone made the circus list. But an interesting thing happened to those who were constantly on the list. Over time, those students who did 2 hours of extra calisthenics got stronger and stronger. The pain of the circuses built inner strength, built physical resiliency. Life is filled with circuses. You will fail. You will likely fail often. It will be painful. It will be discouraging. At times, it will test you to your very core. But if you want to change the world, don't be afraid of the circuses. And with that inspiration, and you might want to adjourn before I distribute them, I offer for each of you a Navy SEAL training commemorative circus cookie, along with
Wow.
a copy of that life lesson.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Yeah.
Okay, well, while you're distributing those, and thank you so much, Mr. Montgomery. While you're distributing those, if there's anyone else who has any comments on any topic before we adjourn. And if not, I'd like a motion to adjourn. Greg, and a second. Fern, all in favor?
All in
Okay,
favor?
and we are adjourned. Thank you.